What's up, YouTube? Boy, do I got a couple of things to talk to y'all about on this one. Let's see if I can fit it all into 15 minutes. I'm going to cover little portions of each thing and show you pretty much how most of it connects. First of all, I know most of you have probably heard of Rabbi Finkelstein or Finkelstein. Also, keep in mind that most of the bad stuff going on is brought on by the bad Jews, not the good Jews, the bad Jews. These are the ones that, when Hitler was on drugs by the United States, these are the backstabbing Jews that he got mad at and started to go against. See, this is the stuff that history tries to manipulate because the United States was behind all that happening. Just like with everything in the Middle East, the United States is the ones that train the terror groups that are over there. All of them. Bin Laden and Bush's family were friends. That was a whole setup. That's why Bin Laden's body was never seen, because he was never killed. It was all a setup. Yes, for insurance money. Yes, think about it. That was trillions of dollars that came out of that insurance for those buildings. Not only that, it destroyed records. Every building that supposedly got attacked was holding records. Hard copied, papered records that hadn't been stored on computers or backed up. That was the backup. That was the hard backup. Y'all forget about that. Papers and all that used to be a hard backup. That's why they destroyed it. And they didn't care who they hurt, because if you're making trillions and you know that you're going to have to pay out millions, what do you care? Right. That's like hundreds opposed to pennies. Right. See, they did it business wise, and they were doing basically profit. What would we profit off of doing this? And business is about making double, triple, or as many times your money back as possible. Well, if you could pull one of these things off to cover up all the bullshit that you've been doing, why not, right? I mean, they told you in so many subtle ways, but people were like, "Nah, that's just a coincidence," or that doesn't mean that. Yeah, well, it doesn't mean it doesn't mean that. And this is how they form. This is another way they form questionable things. This is also how they get people fighting each other, because they leave that part out and they just make it to where people have to assume the rest. Yeah, isn't that how criminals work? And then they make detectives figure out the rest to try and make a case? Right. Also, when did we start letting professional liars become politicians? That's what a lawyer is, a professional liar. That's why I will not become a lawyer. I will not. Play along with their bullcrap like that. We've already accepted enough of their delusional way of life. And if you all think about it, all it was to make it to where we don't own anything. We're not even able to grow food or have water to drink. That's what they did. They cut off your natural resources and acted like they owned them. And you all gave them permission. No, we were told that it was going to come as an angel of light. We were told that it was as soon as they cry, peace and safety. And what has people been whining and throwing a fit about? Peace and safety. And they're too lazy to do it themselves. So they agreed to government, military, police, blah, blah, blah. Even though the whole reason why our country had never been invaded is because the citizens hold too much ammunition and we're too wild. That's why. They've always tried to do it sneaky, with like stuff like Lyme's disease inside of ticks. Yeah, that was a U.S. bioweapon and experiment on the people. That's how that happened. Uh, HIV. Remember, we were told that it was spread from a monkey coming that was caught in the rainforest or in Africa that they were messing with. Then we were told I forget the other that we were told that it was something from a lab that escaped or got out, kind of like Wuhan. It was designed by Bear Aspirin. It was put out to the people through Bear Aspirin. And supposedly the story is once Bear Aspirin was caught, they were told that they had to pull it from the United States and sell it overseas in Europe and other countries, that they couldn't sell it here, and that doesn't make any sense. I think that is a bullshit story to make people believe that something like that was stated. It was not. Think about it. They knew, okay? And they still allowed it to be distributed. And then, supposedly, you hear a story that they had to remove it from the shelves. Has it been removed from the shelves? No, it's still sold. So we don't know which ones are tainted and which ones are not. We don't even know if that story is actually true about them trying to pull it. We do know that it is true that that's where HIV and AIDS came from. It was actually designed to attack the ghetto, the poor people. And I know a lot of people of color try to be like, oh, well, they were after us. No, it wasn't just you. It is the same as it is now. They are after the poor slaves that they don't give a shit about. And the reason they do that is because of just like the Ant movie, they don't want you rising up and going against them. Well, then how come they've lied and switched up right? Because their methods were not working because they got lazy, stupid, and they weren't persistent on what they were doing. There were times where they got wrapped up in their own party and in their stuff that they were doing and did not keep up with their manipulation. So therefore, they had to think fast. Almost got this splinter out of my finger. Thing's been in there for like a week. Got it. There we go. Also, remember, Our whole country was founded by witches, wickens. What do you think a lot of pirates were? Well, no, they were a bunch of basically gangsters that started getting into black magic and voodoo, stuff that they were running into on their voyages and using or believing. And it ended up becoming a group of people that came up with a plan to form secret societies and end up moving into a group that has authority to take over the country, and that would be the government. Oh, it's not just the government that they moved into, they also moved into the banking. Yeah, they moved into where they could control everything. And what did we do? We gave it to them. Even after the Boston Tea Party bullshit, even after slavery supposedly was over, and it was a complete lie. That's why taxation is through the roof like it is, because the Boston Tea Party was a bunch of bullshit, and it's a way to get work for free. Because the way it works out is they end up making all that money back and some, which means it puts you into debt. Into debt because of the way they set things up. It's basically sleight of hand to get you working more or to put you in debt. And it's all delusional. It's all delusional. All this work they want you to do is for them and to keep the country running so they keep getting their pockets filled. Meanwhile, you get done your hard day, what do you go for? Once. And who puts that out there and who gets paid for it? Them. It's circular reasoning. Yeah, and you all realize you're passing this money around, you're fighting over it, you're fighting over the stuff that you buy with it. Guess what? That's all that deception. You value all that stuff more. Even though you don't own none of it. They're just allowing you to take care of it because they're not worried about it right now. So basically, it's a bunch of bullshit. You pay all this money, you do all this stuff, you get all this statue and everything, and you're still expendable. All you were was a worker ant. Yep, if you ain't an elite or somebody in a position where you can actually make shit happen the way they want, you ain't nothing. And even those people, they use. That would be people like Epstein, Maxwell. Even though Maxwell was the ringleader, so was her father. I can't believe y'all didn't see that. That's why they're playing it the way they played it. And they wanted a female. They did. They wanted a female face. That way people would let it go. But what they're not understanding is there's a lot of people not letting it go. And they weren't factoring in on that one. They were factoring in on the woman skating right by and it all being, on her side brushed away. But they forget. We still don't know what happened to her father, and a lot of people believe it was his business dealings. What happens if it was Maxwell, the daughter? You see, she doesn't give a shit about nobody's life, and all she cares about is money. Uh huh. And you can tell she's into drugs and alcohol. Yeah. What happens if she met a bad boyfriend, older boyfriend, that happened to be in the wrong circles? Or maybe it was one of her dad's business associates. and they decided to screw him over. Of course, they're going to make up the story. He was in trouble for this. He was in trouble for that. That's how they all do it. Well, we don't know if it's made up or if it's true. But the thing is you can construct or make stories like that, especially when you have that type of money and you own media platforms, news platforms, and everything else. You can make anything official. You own the companies that have the letterheads. All you got to do is write it up. Y'all might want to pay attention to that. We weren't supposed to accept any of this bullcrap.